Welcome into Friday's ESPN FC Live. Mark Donaldson alongside Craig Burley, Mark Ogden, and Miguel Echegaray. Been working on that one. Welcome. Today we're going to preview the big one on Sunday, Manchester City against Arsenal in the Premier League. And also, following comments this week by Rodri and followed up by Ancelotti and Maresca and others about players playing too much, going to get Craig and the boys' thoughts about, is there too much football? Are the players going to go on strike, or should they just get on with it? We're going to start at the Etihad on Sunday. Or are we, Mr. Burley?
Well, when I put these glasses on, you guys, I can see you clearly. When I take them off, you're all blurred. I'm kind of thinking that's the better option, actually.
My God, he starts with an intro straight away.
That includes myself, you know. That's not Well, what did you ask me? Because I was too busy thinking about it.
I haven't asked you anything yet.
Ask me if it's a must-win. I don't think it is a must-win. I mean, I know.
No, I'm not. That's not the question I want to ask you. Okay, I want to start with you first.
But that's the one I'm going to answer.
Well, you can answer it in your turn. I've got dogs barking one way. I've got sirens in New York for LME. And I haven't even asked Oggy a question yet. Hello, Oggy. How are you?
Hi, Matt. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, good to be here.
Wow. Manchester City against Arsenal.
Well, I thought you were coming to me first there. That's the way you were hedging it. And so I preempted that. You know what I mean?
Not today.
Listen,
not today.
Augie's got all the stories. You got to
him. Has. So I'm going to him first. Thank you.
Well, that's good.
Granted. Yeah. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. Oggy, how important is this game at the start of the season? Can we say it's a Game 5 title decider?
Well, no, we can't say it's a title decider.
Exactly. What is it then?
Yeah, it's a game that will show us it will show us whether Arsenal are ready to challenge City for the title. Now, I know they've run close in the last two seasons, but they haven't actually topped them. So they have a terrible record at the Etihad. I know they put that kind of to rest a little bit by getting a 0-0 draw last season. But if Arsenal are going to make a real statement about their title chances, they have to win at the Etihad because City are top of the league already. Every point counts in terms of, every point they drop is going to be crucial. So Arsenal really have to win. So I think that's the issue. I think as early as it is, I don't think a draw does Arsenal any favours because they'll still be behind City. So they have to win. But, over the years that we've seen title challengers go close a couple of times, then they really kind of show their credentials by beating the team that's at the top. And maybe we're at that point where the balance of power shifts. I don't think it is yet, but I think if Arsenal win, then that's a good sign that it might be.
Craig, how different are Arsenal going to the Etihad without Martin Odegaard?
Well, there's no doubt there's a little edge comes off from what he gives them. But as Mark said, this is a good potential statement to make off the back of a North London derby where they didn't have Rice or Odegaard. Rice is obviously back. But if you can defeat Tottenham, who've had their struggles at the start of the season, and you can then go to City and win, then that's a statement for the rest of the squad. We've been talking about this on the FC show. Look, during any given season, you're going to get suspensions and injuries, and it's how you cope with that. Now, that might be to squad players, it might be to key players, like they've had already. And I think if you can pull off the big wins in the big games when you're shuffling your squad around a little bit, that does wonders for the dressing room. So I'd like to see Arsenal be a bit more front-footed than they were last season, and the game up there, it was towards the end of the season. They kind of played for a draw. They got a draw. Let's be honest, ultimately it wasn't enough because they didn't win the league. So maybe they regret it not going for that a little bit more. And I'm not saying just go toe-to-toe with City, but I think they're more than good enough at times to do that. And let's not forget, when Liverpool were having their great success, Champions League wins, winning the league, unless somebody's going to correct me, I don't know. Whenever they went to the Etihad, they might not always have won, but they didn't take a backward step. They did not take a backward step. And that kind of sometimes lays a marker down. But I personally think they can cope without Odegaard for whatever period it is he's out, and it looks like it's going to be a little longer than first expected.
LME, both games last season were cagey. Martinelli late on at the Emirates and a goalless draw, as Craig and Mark were mentioning, in March. A point's a good result for Arsenal on the road. So what's to suggest that their tactics aren't going to be any different to what they were back in March?
Yeah, they're not. And you actually can go even sooner than that, MD, by looking at what happened at the North London derby and even the game against Atalanta in the Champions League. Here's the thing about Arsenal this season for me. They've been strong. They've shown some resiliency. We saw it against Tottenham. We saw it against Villa, a very strong win there. But they haven't been spectacular. But that's okay. They've been able to get the job done. Now, here's the key, and I'm glad that you mentioned last season, because the thing about last season was, and it goes back to the original question that you asked, which, in my opinion, yes, it's early in the season and there's a lot of football to be played. But here's the important part. Last season, Man City won by 2 points over Arsenal, and they didn't beat Arsenal in neither game. They lost and they drew. Against Liverpool, the third place team, they drew both matches. Against Villa, they won and lost. So there was only one win for Man City in the top 4 in that race, and still they won the Premier League. My point being that in these situations, when Arsenal has to go to the Etihad, they have to try at the very least get a result out of something, a draw or a victory. I know that it's early, but those fine margins are going to count in the long extreme of things. And so to me, I think that it's important to understand that where Arsenal are right now, which obviously early in the season, they're still trying to figure themselves out. There's no Martin Odegaard, Declan Rice coming back from suspension, just like Craig said, right? So I think that you're going to see the same strategy that you saw Arteta do against Tottenham in the North London derby. And the same strategy that you saw last season at the Etihad, because it wasn't a great game. But at the very least, just like Craig said, they went out there and they showed something. So it's going to be a very sticky game. I'm not expecting a fun one here. I'm expecting a sticky game. And if Arsenal can come out of the Etihad with at least a point, that's a win for them, I think.
Okay, anything to put both games in midweek for Arsenal and Manchester City in the Champions League? Goalless draws and neither really at their best.
Yeah, they were both very kind of, I won't say they were flat games, but they were hard to gauge. I think obviously City had the tougher game. Inter at home was a tougher game than, Atalanta, to be fair, are a good team. So maybe I'm being a bit wrong there. But I just thought that, again, Arsenal had that kind of, it's an Achilles heel, I think, where they don't go for it. When it's a really tough game, they don't go for it as much as they could do. They're not on the front foot. They're a team that will try and sit back and take the chance in those situations. I think if you're going to win a title or a cup, you have to be brave at times. And I think Arsenal are a brave team, but you start being brave against, Southampton, Fulham, etc. But you've got to be brave against Man City. And they weren't brave last season at the Etihad. They were at the Emirates when they beat them. So I think this is a game where Arsenal have to really put it on the line and say, we can beat Man City, because they're not going to win the title by going to these tough away grounds and settling for a point. They have to go and win. They have to go and win. They have to go and put a marker down. But did you see anything in these midweek games? I'm not too sure. I don't know. I think, obviously David Raya showed again that he can save a penalty. But no, I don't think the game showed as much, to be honest.
Craig, January 2015, Cazorla and Giroud were the goal scorers. That was the last time Arsenal won at the Etihad. In your career, did you have grounds that you loved going to or didn't like going to, had a good or a bad record? And I suppose this weekend's a good time to put that record right for Arsenal.
Well, I didn't like going to St Etienne in France, which is not really helpful for this conversation, is it? Because I gave a penalty away in a friendly there when on a trip a fella called Zidane up, and then I got sent off there in the World Cup about 8 months later. So I'm refusing to ever go back to that ground. But there's there's always little places. I always love going to Old Trafford because Chelsea had a pretty good record there, even back in the 90s. Beat them and got a draw, beat them up there, and then Luca Vialli, the late Luca Vialli, scored up there against Peter Schmeichel when we beat them. Michael Duberry got the other. We always did a good record there. Big pitch, they'd let you play. But yeah, there are grounds where but listen, it's a new squad, isn't it? It's a different squad. That 10 years ago shouldn't really matter to what happens now. I just think the big thing is like 5 points is. It's quite a hurdle, isn't it, if City were to win, even this early in the season? There's no season-defining result here, but 5 points is a bit of a hurdle even after 5 games, because you slip up maybe over the next couple of weeks, drop the odd point and get a draw, and City keep steamroller, and then that gap continues to grow, and then you're starting to look at, you're just relying on what they do almost rather than what you do. And so I think it is important that Arsenal at least get something out of this game, because as I say, 5 points against a team like City, it's not insurmountable. Maybe with 5 games to go, you're up the creek without a paddle, but not 5 games in. But it's just going to deflate the place if they get that little gap. And they've looked sharp, City, at times. Not in midweek, as Oggy said, they didn't. But I'm thinking back to the West Ham game. I think that's the sharpest I've seen them this season, the way they moved the ball. Obviously, Haaland was on fire. De Bruyne looked sharp. So they've looked at times really, really sharp. And I agree, Arsenal have not. They've just not looked quite as sharp as last season, but they've gotten pretty much most of the results they needed. But they need to sharpen their game up. There is no doubt about that.
LME, right now, Cristiano Ronaldo is the fastest player to 100 goals. Erling Haaland had the opportunity in midweek to eclipse him, didn't take it, but has a chance to equal him against Arsenal. Is he unplayable, Erling Haaland?
Yes, I think that there's a few things that are in his favor this season, which obviously we'll talk about in the second component of this show. One of them being the fact that he had a great summer to rehabilitate, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor, or that rest, so to speak, right now. Erling Haaland is an unbelievable centre forward, but I think that what Internazionale showed midweek, and also what Arsenal showed last season as well, is that, and Real Madrid as well in the Champions League, is that you can defend against them as long as you understand what you need to do at the back, whether that's a zonal type of idea or trying to mark him like Inter did, a three-man centre-back line to try and make sure that you knew exactly where Erling Haaland was, and at the same time nullify, right, the options that he gets. When he plays against teams that don't have that plan, don't have that strategy, it's all over. And I think Arsenal, who have a great defensive record last season, they look good right now. They have one of the best partnerships in the game. Of course, I think they know what they want to do, and they're going to make it sticky, like I said before, like last season. I wouldn't be surprised if Erling Haaland doesn't score in this game either. But he is feeling much better than last season, and he's looking tremendous. And he's going to obviously reach those 100 goals. It's just a matter of when. But it's not just about... Just one more thing. It's not just about Erling Haaland. It's about what happens around him when Man City enter that final third. And obviously, Kevin De Bruyne is a major factor towards that.
One of the things some people talk about, and it amazes me, is why at times, not always, at times he's found it a little bit more difficult in the Champions League. Well, shiver me timbers. I mean, it's the Champions League, and then have you seen the teams from in the bottom half of the Premier League? Have you seen the defenders? Even for all the millions some of these teams spend, he bullies them. They're just not good enough, some of them. He's going to bully Everton defenders. He's going to bully all these teams down the bottom that were promoted, and some of the other guff down there. And then guess what? In the Champions League, not everybody's a brilliant team, but they're better defenders. And so it is tough, like it was in midweek. Obviously, Inter is a different scenario. Inter are one of the best defensive teams around Europe. There's no doubt about that. They were Serie A winners last year. They were in the Champions League the year before, and the final made it difficult for Haaland and for City. But there's a reason why he flat trap bullies a lot of these teams in the Premier League, because the defenders just can't handle him. But it is a step up into the Champions League, and it does become more difficult. And I think we saw that with the Inter defenders in midweek, who I thought did a great job defensively all round.
Just give you some team news for this one, according to the respective coaches. Pep Guardiola confirming that Kevin De Bruyne could be involved despite being replaced at half-time in midweek. And for Arsenal, the likes of Marino and others still out injured. Of course, Martin Odegaard, but Declan Rice returns after suspension. So, prediction time. Craig, what do you think about this one?
I'm going to go with the same prediction that I've given for the show tonight, because they're making me work twice in one day, and it's like it's a lot. I feel stressed and tired already. But I'm going to
that golf game of yours, that handicap, you're going to struggle to get that down from 3.8.
Well, actually, it wasn't golf today. It was dog walking, which is also very stressful because there's 3 of them, and they take me for a walk. So I've gone for a 1-1. Okay. I think Arsenal will be a little bit more coy, so I've gone for a 1-1.
Okay.
I just feel for Craig working twice in one day. He's going to be going on strike soon or talking about it.
Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, we'll get to that in the other segment.
Yeah. Listen, I think City will win. I was at Tottenham last Sunday, and Arsenal got the win, and Tottenham weren't great. I can't put my finger on what it is, but there's something at Arsenal. I think there's something missing. I don't know whether it's a bit of seniority, a bit of, you know, that kind of been there, done it mentality that City have got. And you can't really get that until you've been there and done it. But Arsenal have knocked on the door quite a lot now, and they haven't quite blown it down. And let's not forget, they haven't won anything under Mikel Arteta since an FA Cup success during the COVID time. So the progress is great, but there's an element of just getting a little bit, everyone, not getting carried away with Arsenal, but they are deservedly hyped up and talked about, but they have to win something. And I think they just lack a little bit of that winning ruthlessness. The one player that I thought has added to that, I saw Timber at Tottenham last week, and Timber's brought a bit of that angriness, that bit of toughness, but they need that more of that. And I think City have got that all over the place. And I just think City will win this game. I think they might win 2-0.
That was a Janusz Mihalik answer of what's your prediction? But we got there in the end. So City 2-0, a 1-1 draw for Craig. LME, what you got?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a City win as well. I'm with Augie here. And partly it's because last season, even though it was a draw at the Etihad, like when you look at the statistics, like Arsenal only had 15 touches inside the box, 6 shots, which was the lowest since 2021. Man City had 40 and they were going all at it and it just didn't happen. I think Man City are looking sharper at the beginning of the season. I've said that Arsenal are looking steady but not spectacular right now, and I think that's going to be shown on Sunday. It's not going to be a good game in terms of entertainment, but I see City winning perhaps 1-0.
Okay, full live reaction straight after the game right here at ESPN FC Live. Now, if Craig Burley is asked to work twice again in one day, he has threatened that not just him, but Xhaka, Ali, Dan, and everyone else will walk off the show. So just a warning to the bosses for that. That's not the next topic. It doesn't say ESPN FC employees to strike. It says players to strike. Before we speak to the three gents here about what this story is all about, let's get a little bit of background from the press conference with a journalist asking Rodri this question.
You said a minute ago that someone's got to take care of us, take care of the players. Do you think it will get to a point where, after playing so many games or being asked to play so many games, that the players will say, I don't want to be part of this, and they'll actually end up like going on strike or not refusing to play in such a big kind of calendar?
Yeah, I think we're close to that. I mean, because it's easy to understand. I mean, if we're asking something, and I think it's something general, I think you ask any player, he will say the same. It's not like the opinion of Rodri or whatever. No, I think it's a general opinion of the players. And if it keeps this way, it will be a moment that we have no other option. I really think, but let's see. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's something that worries us because we are the guys that suffer. So yeah.
El fútbol necesita reflexionar porque el objetivo es intentar de jugar menos partidos para evitar menos lesiones. Si esto llega a bajar el salario, creo que el objetivo es jugar menos partidos. Y creo que los jugadores no tienen ningún problema a bajar su salario si juegan menos.
Okay, interesting stuff there about players potentially striking. So, we've got the revamped Champions League. We've got the Club World Cup with 32 teams. So there's a possibility that as many as 85 games in a season could be played by players. Is this a surprise that this has come up right now, Craig? Because I was going through some games and some seasons in the past, and I noticed that just over a decade ago, your former club, Chelsea, actually played 69 matches. So is this new now, these complaints, or has there always been quite a lot of football, just maybe not as much as there is right now?
Well, that's the point. There's just not as much as there is now. And it's getting more. And, I would boycott that FIFA Club World Cup nonsense. I mean, we've had World Cups, we've had Euros, we've had Copa Americas. You chuck in the Gold Cup and all that they play in North America. I mean, where's the rest? I played in the 98 World Cup. I played in the Euros in 96 and the 98 World Cup. And there wasn't much rest after it, but there was a little bit. There's just something every summer. And Rodri's not the first person. I heard Kevin De Bruyne actually about 12 months ago kind of making this point. And there's just too many. We're just adding to it now. We're just fueling this fire of, and I'm slightly hypocritical here, working as we all are in TV. But it's driven by the appetite to get more games on, for people to see more, so as everybody can earn more money. And that's to the detriment of the players. So I absolutely think we're at tipping point. and I don't know when it will just go over the edge, but clearly some of these senior players around the game now, this is a discussion in the dressing room. It was never really a discussion in the dressing room when I played. Sometimes the games came thick and fast, but there was never any talk about there's too many games. Now there is, and these players are talking about it, and people, the governing bodies just can't go like that and say, no, we're not doing anything about it, because things are going to have to, in my opinion, things are going to have to change. And I don't know how that's going to stop.
Oggy, Craig's just said we're at tipping point. And I think the Club World Cup and the extra games at the end of the season has maybe got us to where we are now. But you've got Carlo Ancelotti saying, look, players might take less wages for playing less games. That's not what FIFA want. What are the players' options here as far as potential action is concerned?
Well, first of all, the Club World Cup is the issue that's caused the tipping point, and this is why players are so angry. Because, and not many players are taking part, to be honest. There's only a select few of players, but the Champions League final is on the 31st of May, I think, this year. The Club World Cup starts on the 15th of June, so that's 15 days. In between that, there's an international break on that weekend in June. So this is FIFA. FIFA will tell you that, oh no, it's no different. This is only taking the slot that was occupied by the Confederations Cup, which was the pre-World Cup tournament, which happens a year ahead in the tournament in the country that's hosting the tournament. That was an 18 tournament involving, about I think 8 or 9 games, and it involved teams like New Zealand and South Africa. It wasn't a tournament that had the elite of football. So that is the problem, that FIFA have dropped this club competition in the middle of a summer. So what are the options open to players? Well, I've been speaking to FIFA Pro in the PFA this week, and right now, their priority is not on a strike. The priority is that they are taking legal action against FIFA. It started in the summer. It started in June. FIFA Pro, the unions, the European leagues, which includes the Premier League, La Liga, are taking action against FIFA. So what they claim FIFA basically they've got a monopoly on the calendar, and FIFA are able to decide when their competitions are played. And they've taken this case to court. FIFA are fighting it, accusing the leagues of hypocrisy. So that's where we're at. And I think, so rather than focus on balloting players for a strike, the unions want to see where that goes. If they win that battle, then I guess that would, in many ways, render the Club World Cup impossible. But, I mean, we might want to touch on this again, and Craig will have an opinion on this, having been a player, not just at the top league, Craig played at different levels. For players to vote to strike in England, for instance, there's 5,000 members of the PFA. So the PFA would have to ballot all their members. Now, why would a League Two player, for instance, who earn maybe £500 a week, with a mortgage and a family to look after, why would they vote to stop being paid, to stop playing and give up their income for what are multimillionaires at the top end living the dream that they want to live? Now, both parties have got their axe to grind. The players are playing too much football, but down the food chain where it is a job, are those footballers really going to come out on strike and give up their income and struggle to pay the mortgage because a multimillionaire doesn't want to play 70 games a season? I don't think so.
LME, which side of the fence are you on? Sympathy or no sympathy for the players?
Absolute sympathy. Absolute sympathy. What Craig and Oggy have been talking about are spot on. And by the way, I recommend everybody to read Oggy's excellent explainer on this that just came out on ESPN, which is, he talks about all these points. I have sympathy because we're forgetting about a few things here. Number one, it's not just a physical breakdown going from 70 to 80 matches. It's also the mental breakdown. These players are mentally, psychologically not being able to hold this any longer, right? Then there's also the component about the fact that you're actually ruining the product of the game. It's why we talked about why Erling Haaland's doing so well at the beginning of the season, because he had a summer to rest or at least rehabilitate. Players no longer have that commodity. So now, when you have 70 to 80 matches and you're playing Nations League and, Euros, Copa Americas, and now the Club World Cup, which, by the way, Gianni Infantino today is trying to persuade TV execs to buy this product, because right now there is no one buying it because they know that deep inside this is a mistake. So anyway, when you have players doing 70 to 80 matches, you're not going to see a player that's going to give it their best. And also, let's focus on the younger players, somebody like Pedri, for example, who is now a victim of so many injuries because of the overwhelming scheduling amount that he has to play. I have an absolute sympathy for this. Both Craig and Augie are spot on. And I'll tell you something else. Like, it's also an insult to the women's game because you got Euros 2025 for the women and you got Copa America 2025 for the women. So the Club World Cup now is trying to demand your attention and removing away from the spotlight on the summer of 2025, which should be all on the women's game as well. So there's so many intricate threads here, but ultimately it's this. There's too many matches, and I agree with Craig. We're hypocrites because really, we want to showcase everything and talk about it, but we have to think about the welfare of the player, the welfare of all these players, especially the young ones whose minutes are now being overburdened, and as a result, they'll probably retire earlier as a result of it.
Augie didn't offer me enough to mention his column on .com today. We've got to think of the welfare of the pundits as well, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a tough draw. But going back to the point,
Jack Burley might have to work 3 times in a day, and then it's all over. Right?
Well, I'm thinking 3 times in a week. I mean, but that's a push. Go back to the striking issue. Down the food chain, they're not going to strike. They're not going to strike. Right?
No.
So I don't know if they can pull it off without the root and branch. I remember, just to give you an example, at the end of my career, I went to Dundee. As you know, Matt, Dundee went into administration. I was in my 30s. I was there with Ravanelli, who was a buddy of mine from Derby, and I saw what administration and the potential of no job and certainly no wages for some of these players did to guys that never earned big money. For example, there was players crying. There was foreign players, Scottish players crying. They, girlfriends or wives were pregnant. Somebody put a deposit on a flat, and the rug is pulled under you. So, as Augie said, down the food chain, they're living week to week and month to month, like most people in life. They aren't the billionaire, millionaire footballers. So that's just not going to be there's going to be no green light on that, in my opinion. You just can't sell it to people that are in League 2 and League 3. And I know they get paid relatively decent money down in these leagues now, but it's not the same. So you're not selling this to the players that are scrapping and fighting to pay their mortgage. So they're going to have to figure out a different way to do it.
Augie?
Yeah, I just think that there's one element that hasn't really been mentioned in this, and the club owners could stop this right now. The club owners are the ones that are, silent on this because they know that the money is just going to make their clubs more lucrative. Any team, the Man City's, Chelsea's, Real Madrid's that might win the Club World Cup, you're looking to get apparently £80 million, $100 million prize money, which is, for 4 weeks' work is almost as much as they get for winning the Champions League. So all they care about is the money and the profile. They're not listening to the coaches. They're not listening to the players. They're not listening to the fans. The fans don't want this. That, as Elami said, that if TV companies haven't yet bought the rights. So I received an email from FIFA the day after the Euros final saying we are now putting out to tender the bidding process for the rights to broadcast the FIFA Club World Cup. But nobody's interested, and Infantino has promised massive prize money to all these clubs, and apparently the FIFA are expecting $4 billion for the TV rights. There was a story that Apple had offered $1 billion, and it was turned down. So if Apple are prepared to offer $1 billion, FIFA want $4 billion, and they're not getting anywhere near it, how are they going to pay the clubs? So one rumor that I've heard doing the rounds is that FIFA are waiting for maybe Saudi Arabia to come in and pay for the rights to Club World Cup, almost in a kind of a live golf kind of fashion, which would, change the debate again. But ultimately, this Club World Cup is causing lots and lots of problems, and it's going to get very messy because, like Craig says, I don't think that the players can pull off a strike because you need the kind of critical mass of your members to vote for it. You can't just have a vote amongst the Premier League players. That doesn't work like that. The union is a union, so that's how it is. So it's going to be an interesting few months.
Craig, I just want to end this by playing devil's advocate a little bit. There's 12 representatives will be from UEFA at the Club World Cup of the 32 teams, and 2 countries in particular, England and Spain. So Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid for Spain, so no Barcelona, and for England, Manchester City and Chelsea. So what if a Liverpool or a Man United or a Barcelona, none of the 3 of them are playing at the Club World Cup, decide, okay, we're going to do what we've just done this summer. We're going to go to America. Or other clubs are going to decide, hey, we're going to go to Australia again. We're going to take the money from there. You've mentioned, Augie mentioned the owners here. Is there a little bit of, hey, you can complain with one hand, but as Augie said, a little bit of hypocrisy here because if there's a lot of money offered in the United States or North America or Asia to take your team there, the owners don't think about players' well-being when they go there, do they?
No, but you still have to have a pre-season.
Of course.
So, and I think it's just common knowledge now that the game is so global and so corporate that teams travel. Back in the day, it was the sand dunes at Aberystwyth for Chelsea, but it's not going to happen anymore. You know what I mean? Like in a university dorm. You know what I mean? So it's just the game has grown, and so you're right. There is some hypocrisy to it, but you still have to have a pre-season, and a lot of these teams, be it from the Bundesliga, or La Liga, Premier League, they're trying to sell the brand in these countries. So yeah, I get your point, but you have to have a pre-season, and to me, California is still a better choice than Aberystwyth in Wales. So I'm okay with that.
It's close though, Augie, isn't it?
Yes and no. Close your eyes, it might be, yeah.
Okay, gentlemen.
With once, yes, and I agree.
Thank you for your company today. It doesn't look like there'll be a player strike, but it's one to monitor. ESPN FC every night on ESPN Plus in the United States. Craig and the gang with your daily roundup and previews of all the weekend action. We'll speak to you again this weekend by looking back and looking ahead to Premier League, Bundesliga, and La Liga action coming up over the next few days. Bye for now.